Chapter 245. Do you think you can defeat me? Up until now, the combat awareness that Li Fuchen revealed wasn't too exaggerated and was at the top of the star's ranking. But in fact, his combat awareness had already surpassed the star's ranking. This didn't mean that his ability had surpassed the star's ranking, but it meant that he hadn't reached the limit yet. Boasting shamelessly. Do you really think that no one can deal with you? You don't know your limits, back off. Xianxia brandished his golden truncheon, turning it into a golden astral wind that blasted at Li Fuchen. Li Fuchen's awareness instantly scanned the flaw in his opponent's move. With a thrust, the blazed devil sword burst out. Boom! Li Fuchen's body shook a little while Xianxia took 3 steps back. A pity? Li Fuchen felt that it was a pity. His awareness was far superior to his physical qualities. Just now, his awareness had scanned the flaw in his opponent's move, but his body's reaction was a little slow and didn't strike the flaw without error, causing him to deviate by a hair's width. Don't underestimate this distance. The reason why a flaw was called a flaw was because it produced a slight deviation. The stronger the martial arts move, the smaller the flaw. In order to strike the flaw without error, the deviation had to be controlled to within a hair's width or even more meticulous. If Li Fuchen was at the 7th or 8th level of the Earth realm, even if he didn't improve in other aspects, he would still be able to instantly kill Xianxia and Xiaobai. Because the higher the cultivation level, the stronger the body's reaction. Coupled with the destructive power produced by awareness, it was enough to increase by a few folds or even 10 folds. You hit the flaw in my move? Xianxia's eyes turned cold. His cultivation level was 1 level lower than Xiaobai, at the 7th level of the Earth realm. But his ability was far superior to Xiaobai. This was mainly because his perception was above Xiaobai's and his combat awareness was also above Xiaobai's. The same mystic class, mid-tier martial arts that were comprehended would have differences when executed by different individuals. The stronger the intent, the stronger the awareness, the more perfect the move would be. If others wanted to break the move, they would have to have a terrifyingly tyrannical awareness. If the awareness was only 1 level stronger, there was no way to break the move. His awareness is more than 1 level higher than mine. Xianxia came up with an absurd conclusion. Xiaobai, why are you still standing there in a daze? Xianxia berated Xiaobai. The Silver Cloth sect and the Sky Fiend sect were in a cooperative relationship. When the disciples of both sects were training, they would also be in a cooperative relationship, especially when they were united against outsiders. Before this, Xiaobai had already worked together with him many times. Every single time, he had obtained great success and benefited greatly from it. Netherworld God Claw. Xiaobai extended his right hand and layers of claw shadows that were like a spiral storm drilled towards Li Fuchen. Wind God Break. Xianxia wielded the golden truncheon and brandished it in a crisscrossed manner. A bundle of golden snake-shaped astral winds rushed at Li Fuchen. Materialization of qi energy was something that could only be done by people whose true meaning had reached a certain realm. Once qi jin took form, the flaws would be pitifully small. Of course, this also depended on the type of martial arts move. Some martial arts techniques did not require qi energy to take form, but some did. 2 major moves attacked in a frenzy, and it was much more formidable than Xiaobai executing 2 different martial arts at the same time. Under the pressure of the martial arts qi pressuring, the air around Li Fuchen's location was heavy and chaotic. It had a terrifying binding force, and if it was a regular person, they would definitely be immobilized and could only wait to be killed. But Li Fuchen wasn't a regular person. With a scan with his awareness, Li Fuchen could clearly sense the flaws of the duo's moves. The blazed devil sword slashed horizontally and severed the golden snake-shaped astral winds and spiral storm. This time, Li Fuchen took 2 steps back, while Xiaobai and Xianxia took 3 steps back. 1 against 2, and he is still able to gain a slight advantage? Everyone who witnessed this scene was abnormally shocked. In their opinion, even Qin Keishi wouldn't be able to do this. Use your kill move. Xianxia roared. Li Fuchen's ability was beyond his imagination, and he admitted that he had underestimated Li Fuchen. But he wasn't willing to admit Li Fuchen's ability. The so-called kill move was a move that the duo created themselves. The duo was temporarily unable to comprehend mystic class, high-tier martial arts, but they could use the foundation of a mystic class, mid-tier martial art to create an incredible move. This move's power might not be as exaggerated and would still be at the level of a mystic class, mid-tier martial art. But it was extremely lethal and impossible to defend against it. Netherworld Claw. Xiaobai let out an enraged yell. His right hand opened up like a beast's claw and raised high before swinging down abruptly. In the next moment, countless cracks appeared in mid-air, like countless disorderly waterfalls that slashed at Li Fuchen. Wind got all. Yuan Qianxiu wielded the golden truncheon and constantly drew circles. In the blink of the eye, he drew at least a few dozen circles, with each circle getting smaller and smaller. When the last circle was completed, the circle was smaller than a soybean. Immediately after, the truncheon blasted at Li Fuchen. Woo 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 woo. The sharp cone-shaped golden tornado was extremely fast, as though the void was about to split apart, letting out a mournful sound. Kill move, huh? Li Fuchen's eyes shrank. Once a kill move was executed, it was basically hard to defend against. If it was a one-on-one, Li Fuchen was confident he could defend against it. But if it was a one-on-two, he wasn't so confident. After all, his body's reaction and speed were still relatively inferior to his awareness. Blaze Devil Killer Shadow. Since he wasn't confident, then Li Fuchen didn't think about defending. His opponent had a kill move, so did he. This kill move of his was the finishing move of the Blaze Devil Sword art, but at their level, it was considered a first-rate kill move. A scarlet-red shadow burst out and enveloped the two of them, as though the entire space they were in had been dyed in scarlet red. Crackle crackle. Li Fuchen's body appeared with sinister claw marks and lacerations, with fresh blood spurting out. When facing the two kill moves, Li Fuchen's body's reaction speed was ultimately a little slower. Once he couldn't defend against one of the kill moves, he wouldn't be able to defend against the other's kill move. His chi protection was as weak as tofu and was easily torn apart by the two kill moves. But the two of them didn't have it easy either. Li Fuchen's Blaze Devil Killer Shadow was a finishing move of a mystic class high-tier sword art. In terms of exquisiteness, it was far superior to the two kill moves. The two of them were instantly filled with countless sword marks, as though they were sliced into pieces, making them look extremely miserable. In this exchange, both sides suffered injuries and no one was spared. Too miserable. Someone let out a soft gasp. This Li Fuchen is simply a monster. Even Xiaobai and Yuan Qianxiu couldn't do anything to him when they worked together. It is hard to imagine what kind of ability he will burst out with in the next Stars ranking tournament. If he can improve normally, in my opinion, it is possible for him to enter the top 50 of the Stars ranking. I reckon that he will be able to enter the top 30. There is still more than a year before the Stars ranking tournament, but he is only at the 5th level of the Earth realm now. With every increase in cultivation level, his ability will definitely increase by quite a bit. The top 30 is too risky. Those young heavyweights on the Stars ranking are all monsters and cannot be calculated with common sense. Chapter 246. Li Fuchen was already very satisfied with relying on his own ability to fight until now. Their awareness might not be comparable to his, but they were still at the Heaven realm level. Especially Yuan Qianxiu, his awareness was probably first class even among Heaven realm martial artists. After all, 3-star bone frames had hopes of breaking through to the Heaven realm. Most of the Heaven realm martial artists were 3 or 4-star bone frames. As for 5-star bone frames, they would normally progress to the Reincarnation realm. Hence, elite 5-star bone frames had extremely strong awareness. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that they were on par with Heaven realm martial artists at the Earth realm. It is impossible to kill them with my own ability. I have to rely on external items. The moment Li Fuchen retreated, the Earth-class weapon shard appeared in his hand. The black iron sword chi poured in and shot out. Buzz. In the air, a black light flashed. In the next moment, fresh blood spurted out from Xiaobai's back. The Earth-class weapon shard pierced through his body and came out from his back. This injury was extremely fatal and belonged to the worst of the worst. Damn it. Looking at Xiao Bai, who fell on the ground without any combat strength, Ruan Qianxiu's expression changed. He was a little regretful for interfering. Before he made his move, he assumed that Li Fuchen's ability was only at this level. He didn't expect Li Fuchen's awareness to be much stronger than he imagined. Blaze Devil Killer Shadow. After settling Xiao Bai, Li Fuchen rushed at Ruan Qianxiu and executed the Blaze Devil Sword Art's finishing move. Ruan Qianxiu tried his best to resist, but his body was still filled with sword wounds. This made him understand that the current him wasn't a match for Li Fuchen. It was extremely ironic, but it was an ironclad fact. At the start of the tea party, everyone didn't put Li Fuchen in their eyes. They were discussing, slandering, and mocking him. But now, who dared to slander and mock him? When facing a true prodigy, everyone only had two emotions. One was envy and the other was admiration and shock. Enough! Right at this moment, a thunderous voice echoed from the peak of MT Autumn Rain. A figure appeared. The appearance of this figure shocked everyone. Because he descended from the sky. Even the young leaders of the stars ranking weren't able to skim in the sky and could only skim for a short period of time. Only Heaven Realm martial artists could descend from the sky. This was a very young figure who looked to be in his 30s. His eyes flashed like lightning, and with a sweep of his palm, Qin Keishi and Tang Shiqi were involuntarily separated. Li Fuchen and Ruan Qianxiu were also involuntarily separated. They didn't even have the strength to resist. "Who are you?" Tang Shiqi asked solemnly. The young man said, "Xiang Lei." "So it's senior brother Xiang Lei." Qin Keishi's eyes lit up as she hurriedly said. Xiang Lei was one of the previous hosts of the Autumn Rain Tea Party. Before he advanced to the Heaven Realm, he was ranked 68th on the stars ranking and had an illustrious reputation. Xiang Lei nodded slightly. He looked around and said to everyone, "No killing is allowed in the Autumn Rain Tea Party. This is the Iron Rule. I don't want the Autumn Rain Tea Party to become history, so I hope everyone can abide by this rule." The first host of the Autumn Rain Tea Party had set down a rule that if a massacre occurred during the Autumn Rain Tea Party, the Autumn Rain Tea Party would not be held again. This was also the reason why Qin Keishi tried her best to stop the massacre. She did not want to become the sinner of the Autumn Rain Tea Party. "Senior brother Xiang Lei, don't worry. We will definitely follow the rules." At this moment, no one dared to create any trouble. Before Xiang Lei progressed to the Heaven Realm, he was ranked 68th on the stars ranking. After progressing to the Heaven Realm, he could eliminate them with a single hand. Who would dare to court death? "Very well." Xiang Lei nodded and looked at Tang Shiqi. "This place doesn't welcome you. Get down." As he spoke, Xiang Lei waved his hand. Tang Shiqi felt as though she was grabbed by an invisible giant hand and thrown off the autumn rain. From start to finish, Tang Shiqi didn't dare to resist. Looking at Li Fuchen, Xiang Lei frowned and finally said, "Ruan Qianxiu, bring Xiao Bai and leave." Li Fuchen wasn't wrong in this matter as he saw everything clearly from above. Ruan Qianxiu didn't say anything. He helped Xiao Bai up and left MT Autumn Rain. Before he left, he glared at Li Fuchen with a blade-like murderous intent. "Xiang Lei Shixiang, we still have matters to attend to. We shall take our leave first." Xen Wuyuan and the others didn't dare to stay and left consciously. Xiang Lei didn't ask them to stay. He smiled and spoke to the remaining people. 1.5 years later, the new stars ranking tournament will be held as scheduled. Since I am here, I shall impart some martial Dao experiences to all of you. I hope all of you can go further. The Autumn Rain Tea Party would normally be held for an entire day. It was only half a day now and it obviously wasn't the end yet. Many thanks, Xiang Lei Shixiang. Everyone was delighted. With a former stars ranker explaining to them, they would more or less have some gains. Flying into the main pavilion, Xiang Lei poured himself a cup of tea and took a sip before speaking. To be able to comprehend a mystic class mid-tier intent at the Earth realm is basically the pinnacle. After that, the fastest way to increase one's ability is to create a mystic class mid-tier kill move. From what I know, everyone in the stars ranking basically has their own kill move. These kill moves are either extremely powerful or impossible to defend against. In short, they have to be extreme and there is no need to seek for balance. Because once you choose to release your kill move, it will be the time to determine the victor. Either you win or you lose. Hearing the explanation, everyone nodded. During the earlier duel between Li Fuchen, Xiaobai, and Ruan Qianxiu, Xiaobai and Ruan Qianxiu had already released their kill moves. They were indeed formidable and extreme. Xiang Lei Shixiang, isn't it a little unworthy to spend time on creating a kill move? Wouldn't it be better to spend the time on comprehending a mystic class high-tier martial art? Someone raised a doubt. Besides Xiang Lei, Qin Keishi explained, it is possible to spend some time to comprehend a mystic class high-tier martial art. But only by cultivating it to the perfection stage would it be of great use. This is much harder than creating a mystic class mid-tier kill move. When creating a kill move, you can totally use the mystic class mid-tier martial art that you have learned to create it. As long as you have the inspiration, there is still hope to create a kill move. But to comprehend a mystic class high-tier martial art, it requires a foundation, an extremely deep foundation. There is no room for shortcuts. Xiang Lei nodded. Qin Keishi is right. As compared to a mystic class high-tier martial art, it is slightly easier to create a mystic class mid-tier kill move. Of course, it depends on the individual situation. If you think that your perception is heaven-defying and your cultivation can keep up, you can try to comprehend a mystic class high-tier martial art. As he spoke, Xiang Lei took a glance at Li Fuchen. He could naturally see that Li Fuchen had already cultivated a mystic class high-tier sword art to the perfection stage. As compared to the extremity of a kill move, a mystic class high-tier sword art was undoubtedly much more perfect, which was why Li Fuchen was able to suppress Xiaobai and Ruan Qianxiu. Hence, everything that he said was actually useless to Li Fuchen. Li Fuchen could definitely continue to work hard and comprehend a mystic class high-tier sword art to an even more profound stage. If he could reach the trance stage, it would be more formidable than any kill move and he would definitely be able to enter the top 50 of the stars ranking. As for whether he could enter the top 30, it would depend on Li Fuchen's improvement in this 1.5 years. After all, if you were improving, so were others. In order to catch up or surpass others, the only way was to improve more than others. As time elapsed, after explaining the importance of a kill move, Xiang Lei began to explain the other things that needed attention. Unknowingly, the sky turned dark. Xiang Lei gave a glance to Qin Keishi. Qin Keishi stood up and said, "All right, this year's autumn rain tea party shall end now. Many thanks for everyone's participation. The next autumn rain tea party will be held 2 years later. I hereby announce that the host of the next autumn rain tea party will be Li Fuchen." I wonder if Li Fuchen is interested? Qin Keishi's statement was shocking as she looked at Li Fuchen. Chapter 247. Everyone looked at Li Fuchen. Their initial disdain towards Li Fuchen had now turned into reverence. Li Fuchen was only at the 5th level of the Earth Realm and was able to suppress Ruan Qianxiu and Xiaobai. If he was at the 7th or 8th level of the Earth Realm, how incredible would he be? He would at least be in the top 50 of the stars ranking. Such an existence was something they could only look up to. As for catching up to him, it was just a dream. There was a difference between different prodigies too. They were considered elite prodigies in their respective sects and were considered as prodigies. But when compared to the entire East Unicorn continent, they weren't considered anything and could only be considered as ordinary prodigies. But Li Fuchen was undoubtedly a prodigy-class prodigy of the continent. The difference between prodigies and ordinary prodigies was too huge, and the further one progressed, the bigger the gap would be. Among them, most of them would need to be at least 30 or 40 years old to progress to the Heaven Realm and would be stuck at the Heaven Realm for the rest of their lives. As for the prodigies of the continent, they would normally be able to break through to the Heaven Realm at the age of 20 or so. There was a high chance that they would progress to the Reincarnation Realm and even the Battle Spirit Realm. Of course, it was just a high chance and not absolute. Ignoring everyone's eyes and Qin Keishi's anticipation, Li Fuchen shook his head and rejected, "I am not interested in hosting the autumn rain tea party." He wasn't interested. To him, hosting the autumn rain tea party was just a waste of time. With his rate of improvement, 2 years was a very long time. Perhaps, the autumn rain tea party 2 years later was just a child's play to him. Since it was a child's play, then what was the point of hosting it? Rejected. Everyone was flabbergasted. Hosting the autumn rain tea party was a glorious event. Those who hosted the autumn rain tea party were all reputable individuals. Furthermore, hosting the autumn rain tea party might just be able to form a relationship with the previous hosts, which would be beneficial for their future development. Interesting. A faint smile appeared on Xiang Lei's face. Qin Keishi obviously didn't expect Li Fuchen to reject and said, "Since Li Shidi isn't interested, then Qin Keishi shall not force you." Deng Shidi, I wonder if you are interested in hosting the next autumn rain tea party? Qin Keishi looked at another youth. This young man was called Deng Feng and was the #1 gold class direct disciple of the Juk sect. His strength wasn't inferior to Luo Qingyun, but he was slightly younger than Luo Qingyun. In just 1.5 years, he would definitely be able to fight his way into the stars ranking. Hearing this, Deng Feng cupped his fists together. "Thank you for your kindness, Senior Sister Qin." Deng Feng is willing. In his heart, he mocked Li Fuchen for being foolish. He didn't even know how to grasp such a good opportunity. Fan Qiansong and Fan Qinyu felt pity for Li Fuchen as well. The autumn rain tea party had a long history that could be traced back to a century ago. All the previous hosts, as long as they didn't die, would at least be at the peak level of the heaven realm. Many of them were even at the reincarnation realm. It was said that behind the autumn rain tea party, there was the autumn rain building. The members of the autumn rain building were all one of the hosts of the autumn rain tea party, and a few of the building lords were reincarnation realm martial artists. If Li Fuchen was able to host the autumn rain tea party, he would naturally be able to enter the autumn rain building. By then, it wouldn't just be the Azure Water sect, but also the autumn rain building. But they also knew that prodigies like Li Fuchen were all proud and aloof. They might look amiable on the outside, but they were actually very determined. Once they decided on something, they wouldn't change their mind. Besides, it was too late to regret it now. The autumn rain tea party officially ended, and everyone left. Li Fuchen, my sister and I are planning to return to the Carefree sect. If there is an opportunity in the future, we will definitely meet again. Fan Qiansong bade farewell to Li Fuchen. Li Fuchen nodded. "We will definitely meet again. May the two of you have a safe journey." Right now, Li Fuchen had already treated Fan Qiansong and Fan Qinyu as friends. As Fan Qiansong and Fan Qinyu left, Li Fuchen felt a trace of loneliness in his heart. But soon enough, this trace of loneliness dissipated. The path of the martial Dao was supposed to be lonely and lonely. If one couldn't even endure this little bit of loneliness, it was basically impossible to become a martial expert. After leaving MT Autumn Rain, Li Fuchen didn't return to Autumn Rain City. Li Wushue's death wouldn't be without consequences. Even though the wanted order was revoked, but even an idiot would know that the Heaven Fiend sect wouldn't let him off. If he were to return to Autumn Rain City now, he might attract experts from the Heaven Fiend sect. This was something Li Fuchen didn't wish to see. The 100 Battle region was huge. After leaving Autumn Rain City, Li Fuchen passed by city after city. This time, he specially disguised himself and looked like he was in his 20s. His looks were still extraordinarily handsome, but there were many other special traits that made him look different from before. Right now, even if Fan Qiansong and Fan Qinyu were here, they might not be able to recognize Li Fuchen from his appearance. Although his figure and qi presence might expose his identity, there weren't many who were familiar with him. It wouldn't be such a coincidence to meet someone who was familiar with him. What Li Fuchen didn't know was that not long after he left Autumn Rain City, a group of Heaven Fiend sect experts arrived at Autumn Rain City. This group of Heaven Fiend sect experts were all Heaven Realm martial artists. A pity that Li Fuchen had already left Autumn Rain City and this group of people naturally couldn't find him. Green Cloud City. Green Cloud Restaurant. This restaurant was 9 stories tall and was the most prestigious restaurant in Green Cloud City. Prodigies from various sects who came to Green Cloud City would basically enjoy eating and drinking at the Green Cloud Restaurant. They could also meet other prodigies from other sects and interact with each other. On the 5th floor of the Green Cloud restaurant, Li Fuchen found a seat by the window and sat down. When the dishes were served, Li Fuchen started to eat and drink in a refined manner. Have you guys heard? Doulin clan's Xiahou Chuan passed the 5th mystic martial door in the mystic martial hidden domain and was accepted as a personal disciple by a mystic martial expert. 5th mystic martial door. Damn it, it is already praiseworthy to pass the 1st mystic martial door. There is hope for him to become a right-in disciple of a mystic martial expert. Passing the 5th mystic martial door is simply inhuman. This Xiahou Chuan is indeed a heaven-defying 5-star bone frame. His aptitude might be inferior to a 6-star bone frame, but his perception is superior. 5th mystic martial door. For the past decade, there aren't many who could achieve such an impressive result. Xiahou Chuan isn't on the same level as us. Let's talk about others. Indeed, talking about Xiahou Chuan is too demoralizing. At another seat by the window, a few youths were drinking and chatting. Doulin clan's Xiahou Chuan? Li Fuchen thought of Xiahou Shi. If he didn't guess it wrongly, be it Xiahou Chuan or Xiahou Shi, they should both be heaven-defying 5-star bone frames from the Doulin clan. Which meant to say that even if Xiahou Shi was inferior to Xiahou Chuan, it wouldn't be by much. If he was to attempt the mystic martial hidden domain, he would at least be able to pass the 4th mystic martial door. As for the mystic martial hidden domain, it was a mystical hidden domain that was similar to the Star Road hidden domain. In this hidden domain, there were 8 mystic martial doors and a total of 8 mystic martial experts. These 8 mystic martial experts were all reincarnation realm martial artists. Each of them had outstanding talents and each specialized in a certain ability. Chapter 248. There were rumors that the strength of the 8 mystic martial experts, even if they weren't the top 8 of the continent, they were at least the top 20 of the continent. If they weren't living in seclusion in the mystic martial hidden domain and ignoring the affairs of the world, the East Unicorn continent would definitely have a seat for them. If they were to join a certain sect, it would be enough to make that sect a supergiant. As such, the mystic martial hidden domain became a place that every sect's geniuses had to fight for. Whether it was becoming an in-name disciple or a pro-disciple of a mystic martial expert, it was a rare and precious thing. With a mystic martial artist as one's master, one's path on the martial Tao would be smoother. At the same time, it was also a kind of backing. Although the mystic martial experts never leave the mystic martial hidden domain, it is said that there is a price to pay to leave the mystic martial hidden domain, but a few decades ago, a mystic martial expert still killed his way out of the hidden domain and destroyed a sect, a shedding body realm, a dozen heaven dipper realm martial artists, because his favorite personal disciple was killed. At that time, the entire Eastern Lin continent was shocked. Gradually, the mystic martial expert's personal disciple became a taboo. No one would touch the mystic martial expert's personal disciple unless it was a last resort. As for becoming a personal disciple of a mystic martial expert, one didn't necessarily have to pass the 5th mystic martial door. It mainly depended on whether the mystic martial expert valued you or not. If they valued you, even if you passed the 1st mystic martial door, they might still accept you as a personal disciple. But if they didn't value you, even if you passed the 5th mystic martial door, they might not accept you as a personal disciple. Of course, if one could pass the 6th mystic martial door, they would definitely become a personal disciple of a mystic martial expert. For the past 10 years, there weren't more than 10 individuals who passed the 5th mystic martial door, and only 3 individuals who passed the 6th mystic martial door. And according to what Li Fuchen knew, the mystic martial hidden domain didn't just rely on innate potential, it also depended on whether one was suitable or not. There were some outstanding individuals who weren't suitable for the mystic martial hidden domain and didn't have many achievements, thus they weren't able to become a personal disciple of a mystic martial expert. In short, the reason why the 100 Battle region was able to become an influential place in the East Unicorn continent, a land of prodigies, wasn't just because it could train people here. It was mainly because there were plenty of fated chances here. As long as one could grab hold of these fated chances, one's future would be smoother and faster. Mystic martial hidden domain. I can go to this place. Li Fuchen's next objective after leaving the Autumn Rain City was the mystic martial hidden domain. He didn't need to host the Autumn Rain Tea Party because he wasn't interested, but it didn't mean that he wasn't aware of the danger he would face. Becoming a direct disciple of a mystic martial expert was undoubtedly the best choice to resolve the danger. It was not advisable to rely on others in martial arts. But he couldn't just not take advantage of the situation. Those who did not borrow power would either hide in the deep mountains for their entire lives and only come out when they were invincible. Otherwise, sooner or later, they would die without a burial. However, would he really be invincible after coming out from hiding in the mountains? Not necessarily. Without going through trials and tribulations, people wouldn't feel any pressure. Pressure could make people grow faster and become stronger faster. Unless one's talent and potential were truly heaven-defying, to the point that even the heavens would be jealous of them, no one could easily become invincible in the world. Not even the current Li Fuchen could do it. Perhaps in the future. But there were too many unknowns in the future and Li Fuchen couldn't wait. Drinking a mouthful of wine, Li Fuchen continued to listen to their conversation. There are too many mystical places in the 100 Battle region, and the mystic martial hidden domain is undoubtedly the most important place. It is even more important than the Star Road hidden domain. If only I could become a right-in disciple of a mystic martial expert. I don't agree with your statement. In terms of importance, the Star Road hidden domain is still number 1 and the mystic martial hidden domain can be ranked number 2. I think so too. Challenging the Star Road hidden domain will allow one to obtain the support of the Star Road's energy, allowing one's cultivation speed to advance by leaps and bounds. In fact, one would receive a type of Chi Fate support. This isn't something that the mystic martial hidden domain can compare with. Not only that, no one knows how many stages there are in the Star Road hidden domain. This is because no one at the Earth realm has ever been able to pass the Star Road hidden domain. The highest one has been able to make it to the 7th stage. According to the ancient records, if one is able to pass the Star Road hidden domain, one would be able to obtain a great legacy. This is just a speculation. How can speculation be counted? The mystic martial hidden domain is more practical. Not only can one obtain a large amount of martial Dao experience from the mystic martial experts, they can also obtain the backing of the mystic martial experts. After exchanging a few sentences, the few of them started to argue and discuss. Li Fuchen laughed. In all seriousness, he too felt that the Star Road hidden domain was the most important hidden domain. The stages of the Star Road hidden domain had always been a mystery. From the magnificence of the Star Road hidden domain, there would definitely be a heavenly surprise after passing the Star Road hidden domain. Perhaps, there wasn't even a need to pass the Star Road hidden domain. As long as one was able to pass the 8th and 9th stage, it would be a pleasant surprise. But this surprise, no one had the capability to uncover it, but it didn't mean that it didn't exist. Of course, this didn't mean that the mystic martial hidden domain wasn't important. From the current situation, the mystic martial hidden domain was more important and more practical than the Star Road hidden domain. Chen Yuanhu, come out for a fight? On the main street, there was a thunderous voice that echoed. On the 7th floor of the Clear Cloud Inn, a figure stood in front of the window. He looked down and said, "He Lianbao, 1 year ago you lost to me. Do you want to lose to me again today?" Chen Yuanhu? He Lianbao? Li Fuchen was astonished. Chen Yuanhu was the Azure Water sect's sword tiger who was equally famous as Sword Maniac. Sword Tiger Chen Yuanhu had already become one of the leading figures among the Azure Water sect's direct disciples. As for He Lianbao, he was the son of the Violent Saber sect's Grand Elder, He Lianhu. He was also one of the leading figures among the Violent Saber sect's direct disciples. He didn't expect to see these two in the Green Cloud City. Enough nonsense. Come out for a fight. Are you afraid? On the main street, the 8 feet tall He Lianbao sneered. Afraid? I'll be afraid of anyone but you. Sword Tiger Chen Yuanhu was a person who loved to fight. Why would he be afraid of a fight with He Lianbao? He immediately leaped off the Clear Cloud Inn and landed on the main street. This is the Green Cloud City. You and I shall exit the city for a fight. He Lianbao didn't dare to fight in the Green Cloud City. He executed his maneuvers and skimmed towards the east gate of the Green Cloud City. Chen Yuanhu followed closely behind. Let's go take a look. These two don't seem weak. They shouldn't be weak. They are both at the 9th level of the Earth realm. Plenty of people followed behind. Li Fuchen followed behind too. He wanted to know what level Sword Tiger Chen Yuanhu's ability was at. Outside the East Gate, He Lianbao and Chen Yuanhu had just exited the city when they had an intense exchange. The two of them were both 8 feet tall and had the backs of a tiger and waists of a bear. One used a saber while the other used a sword. The saber light and sword light clashed at extreme speed. The feeling of a needle against an awn caused everyone's scalp to go numb. Such strength seems to be stronger than some of the lower-ranked stars rankers. We nearly missed a good show. With their strength, they do have the chance to fight for the stars ranker rankings. The spectators were in heated discussions. They are indeed formidable. Li Fuchen observed the fight between the two of them and was surprised to find out that their abilities seemed to be above Ruan Qianxiu and Xiao Bai. But Li Fuchen understood that the stars' ranker rankings were from more than a year ago. After more than a year, there were plenty of things that were hard to predict. Ruan Qianxiu might be ranked 98th while Xiao Bai was ranked 101st, but were the two of them really ranked 98th and 101st among the Earth Realm experts? It definitely wasn't the case. After more than a year, there were too many rising stars. There were also too many who gradually surpassed their predecessors by exerting their strength in the later stages. The true rankings would only be known when the stars' ranking tournament started. Chapter 249. He Lianbao's blade was extremely fast, and the blade light was like a broken mirror as it extended towards Chen Yuan. On the other hand, Chen Yuanhu's sword was extremely domineering. His sword momentum was incomparably ferocious, like a ferocious tiger roaring at the sky. After several hundred moves, the two sides were evenly matched. Chen Yuanhu, it seems that your improvement is much smaller than mine. Next, lose for me. After He Lianbao figured out Chen Yuanhu's movements, his saber intent surged. The strong saber light was like a snow-white electric dragon flying at Chen Yuanhu. Chen Yuanhu sneered and stabbed out with his sword. The sword light crisscrossed like claws and teeth, tearing apart He Lianbao's blade light. He Lianbao, I was able to defeat you a year ago, and I will do the same a year later. As he spoke, he slowly walked forward. Streaks of ferocious sword lights were like hungry tigers pouncing on their prey as they scuttled towards He Lianbao. Mad Dragon Slash. He Lianbao released his killer move. 2 sinister blade lights fused together and burst forth with many sharp spikes. It was as though a giant dragon had grown claws and teeth. Kacha! The earth was plowed open, and gravel flew everywhere. Yuan Tiger Kill. Chen Yuanhu also released a killer move. This killer move was named after him. When the sword move was executed, the color of heaven and earth changed slightly. Sand and pebbles were sent flying. Faintly, everyone could clearly see a huge tiger phantom appear in the sky above Chen Yuanhu, and its aura was much stronger than He Lianbao's. Rumble! The earth trembled, and He Lianbao was sent flying while vomiting blood. In terms of basic strength, he was about the same as Chen Yuanhu. But in terms of killer moves, he was slightly inferior to Chen Yuanhu. Such a powerful killer move. Many people's eyes brightened. Li Fuchen nodded silently too. He Lianbao's killer move was about the same as Ruan Qianxiu's, while Chen Yuanhu had clearly surpassed Ruan Qianxiu's. There is always a higher mountain and a better person. I reckon that apart from the top 50 rankers of the stars ranking, it would be dangerous for anyone else to enter the stars ranking again. Li Fuchen was in deep thought. The mystic martial hidden domain opened once every 3 months, and only a month had passed. There were still 2 more months before the next opening. Li Fuchen had been staying in the Green Cloud City and would go to the Green Cloud restaurant to have a meal every day. At the same time, he would also gather information on the various sects prodigies. After hearing a lot, Li Fuchen naturally knew the classification of prodigies. In everyone's eyes, the top 3 of the stars ranking were on the same level. The top 10 was the 2nd level. The top 20 was the 3rd level. The top 50 was the 4th level. The rest belonged to the 5th level. The gap between levels was huge. It was easy for a level 1 to instantly kill a level 2, and it was also easy for a level 2 to instantly kill a level 3, and so on. Even among the same class, the disparity wasn't small. Li Fuchen witnessed a star's ranking ranked 52nd defeating a star's ranking ranked 91st in a single move. Many people's basic strength was about the same, but once they used their killer moves, the difference in strength was obvious. Killer move, maybe I can study it. Although the Flaming Devil Sword art was powerful, comprehending the Flaming Devil Sword intent was not something that could be accomplished in a day. If he could create a mystic-grade mid-tier killer move first, it might be of some help to him in comprehending the Flame Demon Sword intent. Putting his thoughts into action, Li Fuchen started to study the Mystic-class mid-tier kill move. A Mystic-class mid-tier killer move needed inspiration from a Mystic-class mid-tier sword art. Li Fuchen cultivated a total of 3 Mystic-class, mid-tier sword arts, the Starfire sword style, Rotating Flow sword style, and the 9 Revolution sword style. These 3 sword techniques had their own roles, but they were not completely unrelated. After a few days, Li Fuchen gradually had some inklings. He felt that creating a killer move was a very interesting thing. It was just like creating a work of art. This work of art was completely according to his intentions and was most suitable for his combat style. It was still on the 5th floor of the Green Cloud restaurant where Li Fuchen was having his meal. Thud, thud, thud. Footsteps could be heard from the staircase. 2 figures passed by the 5th floor and were preparing to head to the 6th floor. One of the figures accidentally saw Li Fuchen, who was seated by the window, and had a flash of surprise. Han Shidi, what's wrong? The other figure inquired. Han Feng replied, Su Shixiang, this person's chi presence is rather familiar. Where have I seen him before? Su Xiong let out a faint smile. There are too many people with familiar chi presences. Why bother about insignificant people? Come, let's go up. All right. Han Feng nodded and followed Su Xiong to the 6th floor. Before going up, he took another glance at Li Fuchen and tried his best to search through his memories. His intuition told him that Li Fuchen seemed to have some connection with him, and it wasn't just a single encounter. It's him. When Han Feng went up to the 6th floor, Li Fuchen raised his brows. This person was the Han Feng that he met in the Star Road Hidden Domain, one of the Celestial 7 from the Celestial Star sect. It seems like this Green Cloud City is a place of turmoil. Just disguising myself isn't very safe. Li Fuchen laughed bitterly. Disguising one's chi presence wasn't something that a regular person could do. He could only conceal his chi presence, but he couldn't do it every single day. After all, concealing one's chi presence was his spirit soul talent, and it required a lot of energy. It doesn't matter. With my current cultivation level, there are some things that I don't have to bother about. Li Fuchen had his own confidence. During this period of time, his mystic class mid-tier sword intent had improved greatly. The power and exquisiteness of the 3 mystic class mid-tier sword arts were already comparable with the perfection stage Blaze Devil sword art. Every few days, Li Fuchen would only visit the Green Cloud restaurant for 1 or 2 meals. The remaining time was used to create a mystic class mid-tier kill move. There was still 1 month before the opening of the Mystic Martial Hidden Domain, and Li Fuchen created the framework of his kill move. This kill move was a combination of the Starfire sword art and the 9 Revolution sword art's characteristics. At the same time, it contained 2 sword intents. In the courtyard, Li Fuchen stood there quietly while his body was emitting the Starfire sword intent and the 9 Revolution sword intent. After a long time, the wind blew violently. Kill! Li Fuchen made his move. With a flash, Li Fuchen thrust his sword through the air. TSS, 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 TSS. In the air, 7 sword lights started from a single point and burst forward. The attack angles were all different and the power was immense. Just the aftermath was enough to slash out cracks on the ground. Combining the burst power of the Starfire sword art and the tenacity of the 9 Revolution sword art. Even at the initial stage, it doesn't seem to be inferior to any mystic class mid-tier sword art. Li Fuchen was very satisfied with this move. Another week had passed and Li Fuchen finally pushed this move to perfection. Once the sword was brandished, 10 sword lights burst out from a single point. Each sword light contained a massive burst power, tenacity, and rebound force. In terms of lethality, it was around 30% stronger than the Blaze Devil sword art. After all, this move contained both the Starfire sword intent and the 9 Revolution sword intent. With this kill move, I should be able to defeat Ruan Qianqiu in a single move. Li Fuchen analyzed in his mind. As time elapsed, it was getting closer to the opening of the mystic martial hidden domain. On this day, Li Fuchen saw Xiahou Shi at the Green Cloud Inn. Xiahou Shi might not be ranked on the star's ranking, but that was because he was younger than Xiahou Chuan. Back at the Star Road hidden domain, Xiahou Shi was at the 6th level of the Earth realm. Now that he was at the 7th level of the Earth realm, his ability was definitely far above Ruan Qianqiu. After all, Xiahou Shi was a heaven-defying 5-star bone frame. After a period of time, Li Fuchen saw Su Mu. Su Mu had obviously passed the Star Road hidden domain and her cultivation had advanced from the 4th level of the Earth realm to the 6th level of the Earth realm. Chapter 250. As it got closer to the opening of the mystic martial hidden domain, there were more prodigies from various sects that arrived at Green Cloud City. On the streets, youths with high spirits could be seen everywhere. Li Fuchen kept a low profile and due to his disguise, no one recognized him and no one took the initiative to interact with him. The 5th level of the Earth realm wasn't considered high nor low. If one wasn't famous, no one would be interested in him. Of course, Li Fuchen was happy about it. With more prodigies came more disputes. In Green Cloud City, there were conflicts between prodigies every day. Some of them were due to conflicts between sections. Some of them were due to personal conflicts. Some of them were due to conflicts between women. Some of them were purely because they couldn't stand each other. Apart from that, there were also some who were unconvinced because their sects were similar. Chen Yuanhu, your Azure Water sect is a Sword Dao sect, so is my Cloud Creek Sword sect. Since we are both Sword Dao sects, there has to be a showdown. What do you think? On the 7th floor of the Green Cloud Inn, there were 5 to 6 tables. One of the tables had 7 individuals and there was a youth with sharp brows and sharp eyes who spoke to Chen Yuanhu. Chen Yuanhu's table had 6 individuals and they were all gold-class direct disciples from the Azure Water sect. Chen Yuanhu replied, Lin Teng, you are just the number 4 direct disciple from the Cloud Creek Sword sect. You aren't qualified to be my opponent. In order to be his opponent, one must be qualified. If it was Luo Qingyun, he would give him a chance. The youth with sharp brows named Lin Teng laughed. You aren't listed in the star's ranking and neither am I. What is there to be unqualified about? Furthermore, this isn't a contest between you and me, but between our sections. Is your Azure Water sect afraid? Afraid? What a joke. Qin Shixiang, let's compete with them. Who is afraid? Beside Qin Yuanhu, another gold-class direct disciple sneered. The Cloud Creek Sword sect might be strong and their overall strength wasn't inferior to the Heaven Fiend sect, but based on the quality of their direct disciples, the Azure Water sect didn't have to fear them. Only the number 1 direct disciple of the Cloud Creek Sword sect was slightly better, ranked 72nd on the star's ranking. Outside the East City Gate, let's have a showdown. Lin Teng stood up and said, it was the nature of youths to love battles. With each battle, not only would their combat experience increase, but their potential would also be gradually excavated. Other than that, defeating opponents time and time again would allow one's spirit and willpower to improve, and the Star Road Mystic Realm would be even smoother. Since that's the case, I'll accompany you. Chen Yuanhu didn't wish to fight with Lin Teng, but if he didn't accept the challenge, it would undoubtedly weaken the Azure Water sect's reputation. Just like that, the 13 gold-class direct disciples of the 2 great sword sects left the Green Cloud restaurant and rushed towards the East City Gate. Many people came after hearing the news. However, there were even more people who were indifferent. Be it the Azure Water sect or the Cloud Creek Sword sect, they were just ordinary sects and weren't worth watching. If there was a duel between stars rankers, then it would be worth watching. Li Fuchen had been paying attention to Qin Yuanhu and the other gold-class direct disciples of the Azure Water sect. The arranged duel between the two major Sword Dao sects naturally couldn't be hidden from him. Mixed in the crowd, Li Fuchen came to the East City Gate. "Lin Teng, how do we compete?" Qin Yuanhu asked. Lin Teng said, "My Cloud Creek Sword sect has 7 people, and you have 6. How about this? Each side will send out 6 people, and the sect that wins the most matches will be the victor. How about it?" "Sure." Qin Yuanhu nodded. "Wait." Not far away, a figure walked over. "Xuefeng." Qin Yuanhu's eyes lit up. In the Azure Water sect, there were only 2 people that he acknowledged. One was Sword Maniac, and the other was Emotionless Sword Xuefeng. Perhaps Emotionless Sword Xuefeng wasn't the number 3 direct disciple of the Azure Water sect, but that was because he had never come out to temper himself and his cultivation level was rather low. But now, Xuefeng's cultivation level was obviously at the 7th level of the Earth Realm, which was only 1 level lower than him. "I am also a direct disciple of the Azure Water sect. 7 on each side is just right." Xuefeng just arrived at the Green Cloud City today. When he sensed the commotion here, he quickly rushed over. "No problem." Lin Teng let out a sneer. He was ranked number 4 among the gold-class direct disciples of the Cloud Creek Sword sect, but in terms of innate potential, he was superior to Luo Qingyun. Even if he was the number 1 direct disciple of the Cloud Creek Sword sect, he might not be inferior to Luo Qingyun. After more than a year, his ability was no longer the same as before. This Lin Teng isn't simple. In the crowd, Li Fuchen sized up Lin Teng. His intuition told him that Lin Teng's ability was superior to Luo Qingyun. If he underestimated Li Fuchen just because he was the number 4 direct disciple of the Cloud Creek Sword sect, he would definitely suffer. "I hope Qin Yuanhu can be more cautious." Unless it was absolutely necessary, Li Fuchen didn't wish to make a move. "I shall go first. Who from your Azure Water sect will come next?" From the Cloud Creek Sword sect's side, a youth with a short stature stood up. He was wielding 2 thin swords. "I Wang Xiao will try you." From the Azure Water sect's side, a gold-class direct disciple named Wang Xiao walked up. Cling cling clang clang. The 2 of them quickly exchanged moves. It was obvious that the short youth's sword art was very meticulous. The 2 thin swords complemented each other, forcing Wang Xiao to retreat step by step without any chance to counterattack. After a few dozen moves, Wang Xiao was defeated. Second match. Third match. After 3 consecutive matches, Qin Yuanhu and Xuefeng didn't look too good. The Azure Water sect actually lost 3 matches in a row. If they lost another match, there was no longer a need to compete. "Qin Yuanhu, I shall go for this match." Xuefeng's eyes were sharp. Qin Yuanhu nodded. With Xuefeng going, he was very assured. If their cultivation levels were similar, Qin Yuanhu didn't have absolute confidence to defeat Xuefeng. "Qi Long, you go against him. Remember, don't be careless." Lin Teng said to the youth beside him. Qi Long let out an indifferent laugh. "Lin Shixiang, don't worry. Qi Long isn't a nobody. It won't be that easy to defeat me." He was ranked 7th among the direct disciples of the Cloud Creek Sword sect. After arriving at the 100 battle region, he had already defeated plenty of prodigies. The match instantly began. Qi Long and Xuefeng both wanted to suppress each other in the first round, which was why they both brought out their strongest ability. The moment the 2 of them made their moves, Li Fuchen let out a breath of relief. Xuefeng's sword drawing speed was undoubtedly faster than Qi Long. This match was in the bag. Cling, 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 cling. Sure enough, with his super-fast sword speed, Xuefeng suppressed Qi Long as soon as he came up. Qi Long's face was flushed red as he wanted to counterattack. But Xuefeng didn't give him the chance. Once Qi Long burst forth, Xuefeng would immediately attack from another angle, forcing Qi Long to be restrained and only able to utilize 50% to 60% of his ability. Xuefeng is walking on the emotionless sword Dao. Once he gets the upper hand, even I will find it hard to turn the tables. Qin Yuanhu thought to himself. After a dozen moves, Qi Long suffered a crushing defeat. From the start to the end, he didn't even have an effective counterattack. Lin Ting's expression didn't change. The Cloud Creek Sword sect didn't lose a single match. It didn't matter if they lost 1 or 2 matches. But if the opposition lost 1 match, they would immediately be defeated. Chen Yunhu, let's fight. But Lin Ting didn't intend to drag it out with the Azure Water sect. He decided to end the match quickly. I will. Chapter 251. The battle between the two was extremely intense. Although they were both swordsmen, Lin Tang's sword art was cunning and ruthless. Every move was like a venomous snake coming out of its lair. As for Chen Yuanhu's sword art, it was ferocious and tyrannical, like a ferocious tiger descending the mountain, or a hungry tiger pouncing on its prey. With a single strike of his sword, the ferocious and frenzied sword energy contained the power to destroy everything. Boom! The ground shook and sword chi wreaked havoc. Chen Yuanhu and Lin Ting both flew back. Lin Ting, I have underestimated you. Chen Yuanhu's expression was solemn. Lin Ting's strength was undoubtedly above He Lianbao's. Just now, He Lianbao had already used his killing move, but he actually couldn't do anything to Lin Ting. I've also underestimated you. Lin Ting's expression was not much more relaxed than Chen Yuanhu's. He knew his own strength. Before this, he had defeated a young powerhouse that was ranked 90+ on the STARS ranking. But Chen Yuanhu's strength was actually above the STARS ranking's young powerhouse that was ranked lower. If Chen Yuanhu wants to defeat him, he will need at least 300 moves. How powerful was Li Fuchen's awareness? He was able to observe the battle between Chen Yuanhu and Lin Ting clearly. Even the small details didn't escape his discerning eyes. However, Chen Yuanhu has a flaw. His sword art is too violent. When his sword art is pushed to the limit, there will be a period of extreme instability. Although it is very short, it is undoubtedly a fatal flaw. But Lin Ting also has a flaw. His sword art pursues craftiness and ruthlessness, and he always misses some opportunities. In terms of combat awareness and skills, Li Fuchen had long surpassed the level of the STARS ranking. In an evenly matched battle, he was able to see the fatal weakness of both sides. Dang 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 dang, blazing sparks filled the sky. 100 moves. 200 moves. 300 moves. After 300 moves, both sides had familiarized themselves with each other's moves and discovered each other's flaws. Defeat. It was the same killer move, but this time, both sides attacked from different angles. The timing was also different. Blood spurted out from Lin Ting's shoulder as he tumbled backwards. Chen Yuanhu's chest also had a sword mark. This sword mark was very shallow, but it was also very dangerous. An inch deeper would have injured Chen Yuanhu's heart. At the critical moment, both sides attacked each other's weaknesses. Chen Yuanhu's weakness was that when his sword art was pushed to the limit, his sword art would become uncontrollable. Lin Ting seized the opportunity and broke through the defense of his sword art in one fell swoop. Unfortunately, the timing was not perfect, and he could only leave a sword mark on Chen Yuanhu's chest. You lost, Chen Yuanhu said coldly as he looked down at his chest. Lin Ting's expression flickered. He was unwilling to give up. If he was given another chance, he would definitely be able to defeat his opponent. The result was 2-3. Next, the 6th match began. Perhaps the heavens were favoring the Azure Water sect. In the 6th match, the Azure Water sect's gold-class direct disciples were obviously at a disadvantage, but in the end, the Azure Water sect won. In this way, the score was 3-3. There was only one match left. Evenly matched. It seems like it is impossible for the Cloud Creek Sword sect to suppress the Azure Water sect. They would at most be slightly superior. This is mainly because the number 1 true disciple of the Cloud Creek Sword sect, Lu Yun, is not here. If he were here, he would be able to defeat Chen Yuanhu. The Azure Water sect's Sword Maniac isn't here either. Sword Maniac's STARS ranking is much lower than Lu Yun's. That was the ranking from over a year ago. After over a year, there are too many changes. Apart from the top few rankers, the rest are not guaranteed. I reckon that at least half of them will be eliminated. The spectators were in a heated discussion. In the seventh match, the Azure Water Sect's gold-class direct disciples had the upper hand and had a significant advantage. Seeing until this point, Li Fuchen let out a breath of relief. As a direct disciple of the Azure Water Sect, he naturally had the pride of the sect and didn't wish for the Azure Water Sect to lose to the Cloud Creek Sword Sect. Lose. After 100 moves, the Azure Water Sect's gold-class direct disciple rushed into the sky and brandished his sword downwards. Just like the rising sun, the tyrannical and sharp sword light instantly broke his opponent's sword art, severely injuring his opponent in a single blade. We won. The Azure Water Sect was delighted. They were in despair at the start and didn't expect the situation to reverse. But it was fortunate that Xue Feng rushed over. Without him, the Azure Water Sect wouldn't be able to win. At the same time, it was fortunate that Chen Yuanhu defeated Lin Ting and suppressed his opponent's morale. The next two matches were more or less affected by Chen Yuanhu. Just as the match was about to end, get lost. Vomiting a mouthful of fresh blood, the Azure Water Sect's gold-class direct disciple was sent flying with a bloody hole on his body. Such a horrific sword chi. The spectators looked into the distance and saw a figure rushing over. It is the number 1 direct disciple of the Cloud Creek Sword Sect, Lu Yun. This time, the Azure Water Sect is in trouble. Now that Lu Yun is here, Chen Yuanhu won't be able to handle it. Chen Yuanhu and Xue Feng had gloomy expressions. According to the rules, the Azure Water Sect had already won and the opposition had violated the rules. The newcomer was very fast and arrived at the stage in just a blink of the eye. He had a pair of short brows and had extremely sharp eyes. No one dared to look him in the eye. Lu Yun, ranked 72 on the STARS ranking, number 1 direct disciple of the Cloud Creek Sword Sect. Lu Yun, what is the meaning of this? Chen Yuanhu tried his best to suppress his anger. Lu Yun spoke indifferently, nothing much. I just don't like your Azure Water Sect. I heard you are ranked 72 on the STARS ranking. Let me try you. Xue Feng spoke coldly. Lu Yun replied, you aren't qualified. The two of you can come at me together. Shameless boasting. Xue Feng, don't move. How could Chen Yuanhu endure it? His figure flashed as he charged towards the other party. The huge sword in his hand slashed down ferociously. Ding! Without moving, Lu Yun easily blocked Chen Yuanhu's sword with his own. What powerful combat skills! Li Fuchen narrowed his eyes. How could he not see how ingenious Lu Yun's attack was? It had struck the weakest point of Chen Yuanhu's sword, giving off a feeling of ease and ease. It didn't mean that Lu Yun's fundamental strength was far above Chen Yuanhu's. Actually, at the same level, the basic strength was about the same. It mainly depended on battle awareness, battle techniques, and killer moves. With a flick of Lu Yun's arm, Chen Yuanhu was sent flying back. When he reappeared, he was already in front of Chen Yuanhu. He knocked aside Chen Yuanhu's greatsword with a swing of his sword, then pointed his left hand at Chen Yuanhu's chest. Chen Yuanhu's face turned pale and he spat out a mouthful of blood. He was defeated, and it was a clean defeat. It wasn't because his fundamental strength wasn't enough, but because his combat skills were inferior. When one's fundamental strength was about the same, if one's combat skills were superior, one wouldn't even need to use a killer move to defeat the opponent. Back at the Autumn Rain Tea Party, if Li Fuchen's fundamental strength wasn't lacking, he would only need a single blade to defeat Ran Qianxiu and Xiao Bai. The so-called fundamental strength was actually cultivation level, sword intent level, and secret technique level. When Xue Feng saw that Chen Yuanhu was defeated, he quickly went up to obstruct Lu Yun. A pity that Xue Feng's cultivation level was obviously inferior. When facing Lu Yun, who was at the 9th level of the Earth Realm, he was repelled in a single move and couldn't even get close to Lu Yun. Do I have to expose myself so soon? As Li Fuchen let out a bitter laugh, there was a flash of radiance in his eyes. Get lost. Just as Li Fuchen was about to expose himself, a storm-like sword presence swept over. This feeling was similar to the sect origin swords. The entire heaven and earth was filled with sword chi. It's sword maniac. Chapter 252. Sword Maniac's name was rather famous in the East Unicorn continent. For a 4-star bone frame to reach the level of Sword Maniac was undoubtedly unbelievable. To say that he was a heaven-defying 4-star bone frame would be underestimating him. Don't even mention the East Unicorn continent. Even in the sects, a 4-star bone frame wasn't considered elite. Out of the 31 gold-class direct disciples in the Azure Water sect, 90% of them were 5-star bone frames. The remaining 4-star bone frames were the weakest in terms of talent. But Sword Maniac relied on his 4-star bone frame to secure his position as the #1 direct disciple in the Azure Water sect. His perception was even higher than Qin Yuanhu and Xuefeng. In the Stars ranking tournament more than a year ago, the fledgling Sword Maniac had relied on his astounding combat awareness and combat skills to repeatedly defeat opponents who were stronger than him. He was ultimately ranked 105th on the Stars ranking. Of course, this was excluding Li Fuchen. Sword Maniac's 4-star bone frame was considered low. Li Fuchen's 1-star bone frame was truly low. This grade of bone frame was usually hard to progress to the Earth Realm and would remain an Origin Realm martial artist for the rest of their lives. But Li Fuchen didn't have much fame yet. One day, when the Stars ranking tournament started, if he was able to obtain a ranking, his identity and bone frame would definitely be exposed and it would definitely shock the continent. Because a 1-star bone frame was comparable to a 5-star bone frame. This couldn't even be described as a heaven-defying 1-star bone frame. Or rather, this heaven-defying was truly heaven-defying and had surpassed the meaning of bone frame. Sword Maniac, Li Xiangru. Lu Yun had a deep impression of Sword Maniac. During the Stars ranking tournament, he fought with Sword Maniac. Back then, he used his foundation to defeat Sword Maniac. In terms of battle awareness and skills, he was actually inferior to Sword Maniac. After 1.5 years, Li Xiangru's cultivation had a huge improvement and his ability was definitely much better than before. Li Xiangru. Li Fuchen's eyes landed on Sword Maniac. Sword Maniac Li Xiangru had the same surname as him. This was a name that Li Fuchen often heard when he entered the Azure Water sect. There were rumors that if Sword Maniac Li Xiangru had a 5-star bone frame, his innate potential would definitely be able to stand at the pinnacle of the East Unicorn continent. There weren't many that could be on par with him. A pity that he was just a 4-star bone frame. Of course, the current him was already very incredible. After all, he was a Stars ranking magnate. It's said that Sword Maniac, Sword Tiger, and Emotionless Sword have similar talents and potential. However, that was in the past. As one's cultivation increases and experience increases, even geniuses with similar talents and potential would gradually widen the gap. Right now, among the three, Sword Maniac Li Xiangru's talent and strength are undoubtedly the strongest. Li Fuchen thought in his heart. Just from Sword Maniac Li Xiangru's chi presence, Li Fuchen was able to determine that Li Xiangru's ability was much stronger than Qin Yuanhu. If talent and potential were the foundation, there were many other factors that determined the speed of improvement. Some people were very perceptive. Some people were tough. Some people had transcendent temperaments. Some were stubborn and focused. In Li Fuchen's opinion, Li Xiangru didn't just have a strong perception, he was also sufficiently persistent and focused, which was why he was known as the Sword Maniac. It's senior brother Li Xiangru. Senior brother Li is here. With him around, Lu Yun might not be able to win. The arrival of Sword Maniac Li Xiangru had excited everyone from the Azure Water sect. Li Xiangru had always been a legend among the Azure Water sect's disciples. For over a decade, he had never disappointed anyone. They believed that this time wouldn't be an exception. It's Sword Maniac Li Xiangru. There's going to be a show to watch. One of them is ranked 72 on the Stars ranking while the other is ranked 105. It seems like it will be difficult. That might not be the case. Over a year has passed and anything can happen. Putting aside everything else, just Lin Teng and Qin Yuanhu already have the strength of a Stars ranker. It is imaginable that the others wouldn't remain stagnant. The spectators were all revealing curious expressions. Lu Yun and Li Xiangru might not have high rankings, but they were both famous individuals. This battle between the two of them should be an eye-opener for them. You are here. Wiping off the fresh blood from the corner of his mouth, Chen Yuanhu spoke to Li Xiangru. He might not be willing, but he had to admit that the current him wasn't a match for Lu Yun. His combat skills were far inferior to Lu Yun's. Li Xiangru took a glance at Chen Yuanhu and Xue Feng. The two of you have embarrassed yourselves. Xue Feng clenched his fists tightly. Li Xiangru's words were still unpleasant to the ears, but he didn't have any way to refute it. He wanted to be like Sword Maniac, to be obsessed with the Sword Dao, to persist in the Sword Dao, and to focus on the Sword Dao. This was also the reason why he didn't come out to temper himself. He was afraid that he would be distracted and be disturbed by the outside world. But after arriving at the 100-battle region, he realized that he was wrong. He wasn't Sword Maniac Li Xiangru. He wasn't able to be like Li Xiangru, who immersed himself in bitter cultivation to attain great accomplishments. Li Xiangru seemed to be born for the Sword Dao. Even though he didn't have much combat experience, his combat awareness and combat skills were still extremely formidable. He should have walked his own Dao. If he could walk his own Dao, he would definitely be stronger than the current him. At least he wouldn't be weaker than Chen Yuanhu. A single wrong step had wasted at least a year of his time. Shaking his head, Xue Feng didn't say anything. This Li Xiangru sure isn't easy to communicate with. Li Fuchen laughed. He could feel that Li Xiangru didn't have any intention to despise the two of them and was merely stating a fact. Perhaps only such people can avoid tempering and focus on their own martial Dao. There were thousands of paths. Tempering was one path, immersing oneself in bitter cultivation was another path. It all depended on one's own situation. Li Xiangru's qi presence was like a sword qi storm, which was on par with Lu Yun's qi presence. When both of their qi presences clashed, there was a horrifying explosion in the air. Li Xiangru, 1 year ago, you couldn't even last 3 moves against me. 1 year later, do you think you can defeat me? Lu Yun gained the upper hand with a show of strength and used facts to strike at Li Xiangru's qi presence and confidence. Li Xiangru said, "Let's fight." He didn't like to speak much and in his opinion, words were all nonsense. Lu Yun was stunned. He didn't know much about Li Xiangru's personality and was instantly given the cold shoulder. If you want to fight, then let's fight. Withdrawing his aura slightly, Lu Yun drew his sword out inch by inch. 100 sword kill. Unexpectedly, Li Xiangru didn't even have the intention to gather his battle intent. He immediately drew his sword and executed a kill move. In the air, there was a dense sword qi, as though there were countless of Li Xiangru brandishing their swords. Every sword was extremely precise, drawing a stunning arc in the air. What terrifying combat skills! Li Fuchen's eyes lit up. In terms of combat awareness, no one could match him, but in terms of combat skills, it might not be the case. 2 months ago, he was already 20 years old, while Li Xiangru entered the Azure Water sect at the age of 13 and was now 26 years old. After so many years of hard work, it was enough for Li Xiangru's combat skills to reach an astonishing level. Frowning, Lu Yun took a deep breath and executed his kill move as well. In the air, there was a sword shadow that was elongated and swept across the sky. PFFF, 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 PFFF. Li Xiangru's sword qi were all neutralized. Wolf sword kill. After neutralizing Li Xiangru's kill move, Lu Yun actually burst out with a second kill move. Once the kill move was executed, another sword shadow skimmed out and formed the shape of a wolf. 2 kill moves. Chapter 253. The more killer moves one had, the more perfect one's combat ability was. A slightly weaker Mystic Class mid-tier killer move's power was comparable to a Mystic Class mid-tier sword art, and it was even harder to defend against. It was extremely extreme. A powerful Mystic Class mid-tier killing move was not only difficult to defend against, it was also extremely powerful. In theory, it was infinitely close to a Mystic Class high-tier sword art. Of course, the stronger the profound grade middle-tier killer move, the harder it was to create. It would depend on the mid-grade profound rank sword intent he had comprehended. If he had just comprehended a Mystic Class mid-tier sword intent, he would only be able to create the weakest killer move. If the mystic class middle tier sword intent was unfathomable, he could create a stronger killing move. If the profound rank mid-rank sword intent reached a limit, a stage that was infinitely close to a profound rank high-rank sword intent, then he would be able to create a killing move that was infinitely close to a profound rank high-rank sword art. However, there was another possibility. Killing moves did not necessarily contain one sword intent, they could contain 2 or even 3 sword intents. Li Fuchen's kill move contained the Starfire sword intent and the 9 Revolution sword intent. Killing moves that contained 2 sword intents were more varied and harder to defend against. To a certain extent, they were also more powerful. In theory, if many Mystic class middle tier sword intents were infused into a killer move, it could push this killer move to the level of a Mystic class high tier sword technique, or even stronger. However, it was only in theory. He had not heard of anyone being able to do it yet, because when the sword intents were mixed together, it was too difficult to control them. The initial stages might be smooth, just like Li Fuchen. But as the killer move perfected and became stronger, the conflict between the sword intents would increase until it was irreconcilable. When Li Fuchen first came out to temper himself, his mystic class mid-tier sword intent was still at the initial stage. Right now, his mystic class mid-tier sword intent was already at the unfathomable stage. If it wasn't for his exceptional perception, he wouldn't be able to incorporate 2 sword intents into his kill move. If the day came when his mystic class mid-tier sword intent reached its limit, it would probably be troublesome. However, heaven never bars one's way. With different sword intents mixed together, if one's perception was high enough, it was possible to fuse 2 sword intents into 1 sword intent. He only needed to give up a part of the irreconcilable sword intent and fuse the part that could be reconciled. Of course, it was easier said than done. The fusion of 2 mid-tier profound class sword intents would definitely result in a very powerful high-tier profound class sword intent. It wouldn't be impossible for it to reach peak-tier profound class sword intent, but the difficulty was too high. Li Fuchen didn't think too much about it for now. In his opinion, comprehending the Blaze Devil sword intent was enough for his strength to increase drastically. As for fusing sword intents, that was something to be done after comprehending the Blaze Devil sword intent. Once the wolf sword kill was executed, the air currents in the area where Li Xiangru was at became violent and sharp. This was an area of effect killing move and it was very hard to dodge. 10 sword kill. Li Xiangru's eyes squinted into a slit as he similarly executed his second killer move. Boom. The air currents flowed in reverse as boundless sword intent and sword chi surged around Li Xiangru's body like a torrential river, attacking Lu Yun. If the 100-sword slash was complex and ever-changing, then the 10-sword slash was unstoppable. When the number of swords decreased, the power of the swords increased, reaching an extremely terrifying level. Rumble. An earth-shattering explosion resounded as Lu Yun and Li Xiangru were both sent flying backwards. In between them, the ground was fractured and full of holes. It was as though countless Earth Realm martial artists had fought here. It was a horrifying mess. Too terrifying. He actually created a second killer move. Lu Yun is indeed worthy of being ranked 72 on the stars ranking. He isn't someone that those lower-ranked stars rankers can compare with. Sword maniac Li Xiangru is also unbelievably strong. He is actually on par with Lu Yun. The spectators were shocked. Creating a killer move wasn't a simple task. Creating a killer move was already extremely difficult, and perfecting it required a large amount of time. Creating a second killer move, which was even stronger than the first killer move, would definitely require a lot more effort. After all, the creation of a killer move had to be useful to oneself. One mustn't casually create an impractical killer move. Since the killer move couldn't do anything to the opposition, the two of them started to fight in close combat. As a famous stars ranker, Lu Yun's sword was like the flowing clouds in the sky, ever-changing. Sword maniac Li Xiangru's sword was precise, so precise that it made one's scalp go numb. Clang, clang, clang. The blades of the swords clashed against each other, causing sparks to burst out. The two of them were moving from east to west, up and down. Their figures intertwined and their sword chi intertwined. Towards the end, it was hard for the audience to observe the details of the battle. They could only sense who had the upper hand from the moment of contact. It seems like I cannot underestimate anyone in this world. Li Fuchen's awareness was astounding and was naturally able to observe the details of the battle. There were some details that the two of them couldn't notice, but Li Fuchen was able to observe them clearly. In his eyes, Lu Yun's sword seemed to have a spirit of its own. It might look light and didn't have any presence, but every single burst of power was abnormally shocking. But Li Xiangru's sword was unimaginably precise. It was always able to find the tiniest gap and penetrate through. Both of their combat skills were exceptional, and just based on this point, it was enough to convince the audience. 100 moves, 200 moves. The battle between the two of them was in full swing, as though they wouldn't get tired. Li Xiangru has a higher chance of winning. In terms of details, he is superior. Li Fuchen thought to himself. Interesting. It seems like the Cloud Creek Sword sect and the Azure Water sect still have some decent individuals. It was unknown when a group of youths appeared in an open space not far away. This group of youths were dressed in pale golden robes with a dragon-shaped pattern on them. The leader had a golden crown on his head and a jade-like face. He had a sword on his left waist and a flute on his right waist. At the same time, he had a smile on his face, and a sharp and domineering qi presence filled the air, as though he was the Emperor of Swords. It's the Sky Dragon Sword sect. The Sky Dragon Sword sect is one of the two major Sword Dao sects in the East Unicorn continent. The leader should be young Master Dragon Sword, Xianxia. Someone noticed the situation here and quickly looked over. He couldn't help but take in a breath of cold air. The Sky Dragon Sword sect was one of the pinnacle forces in the East Unicorn continent and also one of the two major Sword Dao sections. It was much stronger than the Cloud Creek Sword sect and the Azure Water sect. Young Master Dragon Sword, Xianxia, 6-star bone frame, was a rare Sword Dao prodigy in the East Unicorn continent. He was ranked 28 on the stars ranking, and if it wasn't for his young age, he would definitely be able to break into the top 10. In the next stars ranking, he was a popular candidate for the top 10 or even the top 3. What is Xianxia doing here? What else can he do? He is definitely here to challenge the mystic martial hidden domain. That's true. Challenging the mystic martial hidden domain doesn't just require innate potential, but it also requires a certain amount of experience. It seems like this Xianxia isn't willing to only pass the 5th mystic martial door. He wants to pass the 6th mystic martial door, which is why he delayed until now. That's right. They are all personal disciples, but there are also differences. There are 8 mystic martial experts, and each of them is more incredible than the other. It is said that the top 2 mystic martial experts don't have any personal disciples yet. Some time ago, Xiahou Chuan only became a disciple of the 4th-ranked mystic martial expert. If Xianxia is able to pass the 6th mystic martial door, he might be able to become a disciple of the top 2 mystic martial experts. A storm is brewing. The 100-battle region is truly restless. I wonder how spectacular the next stars ranking tournament will be. Welcome to Immortal Cultivation Audiobooks, your gateway to the mystical world of Xianxia. Dive into legendary tales of martial arts, spiritual growth, and immortal ascension. Here, we bring you full-length English audiobooks of the best Wuxia and Xianxia stories, from young prodigies to ancient sect wars. Perfect for fans of Against the Gods, Martial World, and tales of demons and gods.